Hello, boys and girls. Just felt like clearing out the cobwebs a little bit on this Sunday afternoon, and also trying out a new lighting setup because I was using the overhead before and it was causing, well, enough kind of blowout there to separate me from the background, but it was a little too much, kind of causing too much glare. And so I thought, hey, just use the natural daylight because it just kind of seems to work today. But yeah, trying a new lighting setup, just gonna see how everything looks. And while we do that, why don't we compare and contrast a few things? Because as we all know, various states in the United States and possibly other, well, provinces, counties, any, however you want it, territories, however you want to divide it up, across the world are probably reaching a point where they're going to try to reopen at some point. And so to celebrate, uh, and also, be cautionary about it, because at least, from my mind, I think we might be reopening a little too soon without the proper precautions. But in any case, let's take a look and compare and contrast David Cronenberg's Rabid with the Soska Sisters' Rabid remake. Um, anyway, so the basic story of this one, of the original Rabid, is, that you have the star is, where is she? Marilyn Chambers, yes. Who is mostly known at the time for doing porn films. Like, I believe she was in Behind the Green Door, which was regarded as being pretty artistic and kind of, well, different than what other porno films had done, even during the 70s, which was called porno chic back when they were getting mainstream attention and critical acclaim and things like that. But this was David Cronenberg, one of his early films. It was, something that he had done a movie called Shivers, which was financed by it was a, if I recall correctly, it was a Quebec, I think it was a Quebec adult entertainment company, I think, that helped finance it. And also, like, there was some money from, like, they have, like, unlike here in the United States, in Canada, New Zealand, I think Australia, England, they have other, like, publicly supported, film commission or film, grants and things like that. But bottom line is that within their government systems, there are places that you can go to get some kind of funding for things that may not necessarily get you a return on investment, except that his film Shivers, I believe, did get a return on investment. And so then they kind of went into this film kind of with that same energy, and they wanted to do it. I think that they were looking at, that I'm getting a little mixed up because they filmed this in Canada. It takes place kind of between, in like a backcountry road between Toronto and Montreal, and ultimately ending up in Montreal. So that's kind of geographically where we're at. But they were trying to, I guess, yeah, I remember now. So what it was, I guess David Cronenberg was trying to figure out, was he able to make his films in Canada, or would he have to go down to LA, and how would we distribute a film like this? And, if you look at the back here, it says a New World Picture because, well, Roger Corman was able to get behind something like this, and that helped, that helped to get it moving. And actually, the executive producer of this film is Ivan Reitman, who I talked about when I unboxed Cannibal Girls, which I was watching a little bit of the other night. I need to finish it, but yeah. So the basic plot of this film is that you have Marilyn Chambers, who's is riding on a motorcycle. The motorcycle gets in an accident on a backcountry road between Toronto and Montreal. So we can assume that it's either rural Ontario or rural Quebec. And she gets in that accident, and the only place that can tend to her injuries in time that's nearby is this plastic surgery clinic that is out in the middle of nowhere that does these experimental treatments. and she gets the experimental treatment because, well, her life will, she'll be dead otherwise. And so then she wakes up with this feeling of ravenous hunger, and before we know it, she's got a stinger that comes out of her armpit of all places, and that stinger, stings people, and she's like she stings them, but also like is able to infect other people, and then they become rabid. They behave much like the 28 Days Later zombies would behave later on in 2002. That they're not the living dead, they're infected humans, but they have a ravenous need to feast on human flesh. And then, well, actually, yeah, okay. I was just trying to see if that would be a fair way to say that, because it's mostly just the fact that the virus or whatever gets transferred via bite. That is more that's what I made me think of zombie. But what's neat about this is that Marilyn Chambers herself is actually immune from the virus that she's carrying, and she's kind of like Typhoid Mary in that way. And so, yeah, her little stinger thing infects others, but she herself is immune. And, before too long, the whole countryside is swarming with infected people, and, Montreal's getting swarmed with them, and it's just a mess. I really dug this movie. I saw it specifically during some of the earlier throes of this coronavirus crisis, and I did it because I was, if you're like me, you kind of have a somewhat of a gallows sense of humor, and so you're like, well, gotta get educated about this stuff, gotta educate myself in apocalypses. So I watched all of the George Romero zombie films. I watched this. I watched, quite a lot of films about like infections and things. And this one really stuck out because you can really see David Cronenberg's aptitude for body horror on display. And it's just, I like that. I kind of, at the time anyway, I kind of put this in the zombie category and thought of it as very like foreshadowing a lot of what would come along later with 28 Days Later. I still think that is true, but it doesn't typically get classed along with other zombie films, even though I think the infected people in here do behave in a very zombie-like manner. But again, they're not the living dead, they are infected humans. So it just depends on how you define it, really. Because again, the ones in 28 Days Later, they were infected humans. They weren't the living dead, so they ran, and they behaved like, well, rabid dogs, rabid animals. And, so I just thought it was an interesting, I've never quite seen a story like that. There was a lot of good kind of cruel twists of fate. The fact that her life is saved, but, she becomes this catalyst for this deadly disease that they can't get control over, and but she also feels a kind of odd sense of empowerment, with the whole thing. So I thought it was quite good. It's pretty short, it's pretty low budget, but for low budget horror, and especially horror from another country or whatever, this is definitely a good one to check out. And, you can debate back and forth whether or not this counts as a zombie film. Let me know what you think about that. But, let's move on quickly to the Soska Sisters, Rabid. Now, this came out, the other one was 1977, this one was 2019, so it's pretty brand spanking new. This came out on Blu-ray not long ago. I managed to get it with the slipcover, which was nice. It stars Laura Vandervoort, who you may know from Smallville when she played Kara Zor-El, a.k.a. Supergirl, and she also was on Bitten. She's on a bunch of stuff. She was in Jigsaw also recently. But yeah, I think she hands down gives her best performance in this film. And the Soska Sisters in general, I've been a big fan of. Like, I loved American Mary. That's one of my favorite horror films of the 2010s. They did that. They did See No Evil 2. They did Vendetta with Dean Cain and Big Show, which is actually pretty darn good as far as like a prison action film. Um, and then they did this, and probably some other things I'm forgetting right now. But anyway, yeah. So this one, there's a couple of interesting things that are different. So our main heroine, played by Laura Vandervoort, Sarah, um, she at the start of the film had already been through an accident, a car accident. This was like years ago. So like you see, like there's Laura Vandervoort, is she's there, but like the bridge of her nose is like pushed to one side. Her skin looks pretty bad. Kind of like, I guess you could say like not the worst burn victims ever, but bad enough to notice. It's things like that. So she's got a lot of like obviously physical signs of the fact that the accident happened years ago and killed her parents. She lives with her friend, who's pretty dismissive and shallow and kind of condescending to her, but she's the only one that she's got left in the world pretty much. And so what happens is that she gets in another accident, on a moped, not a motorcycle, but she gets in another accident, just like she's going down one part of the road and someone else kind of T-bones her, I guess. And so she gets horrifically scarred, and this is something that they show in pretty gruesome detail, which you can kind of see from the cover there. But like, most of the skin around her mouth is missing. Like she pretty much doesn't have most of her lips. They had to wire her jaw shut while her jaw got reset. She's in a lot of pain. She was like in a coma or something for like 3 weeks to a month. I can't remember which one. Like 3 weeks to a month. And, basically she was getting to the point where like she would never conceivably live a normal life again, and like having to drink through a straw and everything. So then she stumbles upon this plastic surgery clinic that does experimental treatments, and they never make it clear if it is Canada or the United States. The way that they phrase things, like that their health care has largely failed patients or whatever, leads me to believe that this is meant to be the United States, and it's meant to be somewhat of a criticism of the healthcare system, but also obviously some of the dangers of experimental treatments, because she undergoes an experimental treatment using stem cells, and they manipulate them in such a way that they're able to, well, fix her face, quite literally. And so yeah, her mouth is back to normal, her nose is fixed, and she's got great skin. She's Laura Vandervoort, fabulous. And but then same thing, she gets overcome by hunger, and but that whole process is much more personal, and it's much more, you feel that it's a much more personal journey because she undergoes a lot of nightmarish hallucinations, and they warn her that the side effects may include hallucinations that feel very real. And so she starts to hallucinate pretty badly and not remember where she was the previous night, and not surprisingly, the disease is taking its hold on her and on other people, but she herself does not deteriorate the way that other people do, but she's still affected in some way. And more so just like her trying to navigate this world where people are all of a sudden being really nice to her and giving her all these career opportunities that she didn't have when she had a messed up nose and skin and all that. So it's another sort of commentary on how beautiful people get a lot of opportunities handed to them simply on that basis, and it is true. But yeah, that it has a different ending, a different progression, which I don't want to spoil. But it was as far as remakes go recently, it was really really darn good, I thought. It has the same essential premise as the original, but it does a lot of things different. It carves its own identity. You don't have to have seen the original to appreciate it, and it has different conclusions, different things it focuses on than this film. Well, see, they both are concerned with. They're both concerned with the physical deterioration of people in some way and the spread of disease and that kind of thing. But you really do feel like in the remake it's a much more personal journey, whereas with David Cronenberg's Rabid, you get more of a macrocosmic, large picture idea of what the spread of this contagion would be like. Not to say that it's like an ensemble thing, so it's not like, wasn't it Steven Soderbergh who did Contagion, that whole big film? I believe that's right. But it's not like that. It's got a smaller cast than that, but it just, you feel more like it's about seeing this disease progress, and then this is more of a personal journey. I think for me personally, they're very neck and neck. I would probably put the original first just because, well, it set the stage, number one. Number two, it was impressive for a low-budget horror film, which I don't think this was hugely budgeted, but still, it's like you can tell that they had a little bit more help. This one, I think that it had, I think the thing that made me like this one a bit more is that it had more of a cruel twist of fate feel to it, as far as she gets in an accident and the only place that is around that can save her life is this place that's out in the middle of nowhere, and otherwise they won't be able to save her life in time. Here, in the remake, it's much more of an active choice to undergo this experimental treatment. Yes, there are risks associated, and could she have eked out a miserable existence without doing that? Yes, but it wouldn't have been fun, and she most likely would have been pushed to the point of bankruptcy and all that. So they make a point that, that her hand was more or less forced, but there just seems to me to be a much crueler twist of fate here, plus the fact that Marilyn Chambers here, she, like, Laura Vandervoort goes through her own kind of empowerment phase of the, feeling like she's more alive and more in control of her life. She goes through that too. It seems like she feels more bad side effects than Marilyn Chambers does, and so there's a certain, again, like Typhoid Mary, in real life Typhoid Mary, she was an asymptomatic carrier of typhoid, and she herself was not affected, but everyone else around her was, and I think that, I don't know, there's just a delicious irony there that I like. And, it's just cool to see. It's cool to see how the remake paid homage to the original, but it's also cool with the original. You see some of David Cronenberg's path towards body horror and towards bigger movies like The Fly. But yeah, I really love both of these films. Definitely check them out. Compare and contrast on your own. Let me know what you think about them. And then lastly, do you think that they count as zombie films? Because out of the two, I think that the original would come closer to being called a zombie film than the remake would, because the remake, you almost feel there's more of like a vampire-ish aspect to this, but also with the hallucinations and with some of the way that the sickness progresses in other people, it really feels like they were trying to make sure that people wouldn't confuse them with zombies. And if anything, towards the end you get some creatures, for lack of a better word, people, sick humans, that to me resembled something out of Silent Hill or something like that. So, which is it's a compliment in terms of the creature design and everything, but again, it's like if you're looking at it through the zombie paradigm, then it may not really work for you. But if you don't, if you just appreciate it for what it is, then you'll really enjoy it. But yes, definitely check them both out. They're both really great. The Soska Sisters and David Cronenberg are both really, really good filmmakers. Definitely a testament to their country and to the output of Canadian horror in general. And so yeah, I just wanted to, give them a shout out and remind you all to stay safe. And even though your state, your county, your whatever may be opening again, there's going to be a flood of people that are going to go out and immediately try to party like it's 1999. And guess what? Then they're going to be the ones who get infected first. So I would say, don't be afraid, but also don't be an early adopter either. I'd say, just keep calm and just let this thing settle down. It's not gonna disappear overnight. And while you're at it, watch a bunch of movies about people being infected, because there's nothing better than watching the fake world crumble around you as the real one is, if you're an insane person like me. Anyway, just wanted to let you know about that, and see you in the next video.